Marcus Thompson sat in the back corner of his introduction to psychology class, who'd pulled up, eyes fixed on his notebook. At 19, he looked like any other college freshman trying to blend into the background of campus life. His worn sneakers, faded jeans, and oversized hoodie gave no hint of the extraordinary circumstances that had brought him to this small university in Montana. The professor droned on about behavioral patterns, while Marcus sketched absent patterns in his margins. These weren't random drawings. They were tactical formations he'd memorized years ago. Muscle memory from a life most teenagers never experienced. His classmates saw a shy kid who barely spoke during discussions. They had no idea that the quiet freshman beside them had once been the youngest person ever recruited into a classified government program. Sarah Chen, sitting 2 seats over, noticed how Marcus never seemed surprised by anything. When the fire alarm went off during their first week, everyone else jumped. Marcus had already identified the exits before the sound started. When a car backfired in the parking lot, other students looked around confused. Marcus instinctively positioned himself behind the concrete pillar. These weren't normal reactions for someone who claimed to be from a small farming town in Nebraska. The transformation had begun 5 years earlier when Marcus was just 14. His parents thought they were sending their gifted son to a prestigious boarding school. The acceptance letter had arrived with official government seals and promises of advanced education. What they didn't know was that their son had been selected for something far more complex than accelerated learning. The Prometheus Initiative was buried so deep in classified files that most government officials didn't know it existed. Children with exceptional abilities, not supernatural powers, but remarkable combinations of intelligence, physical capability, and psychological resilience were identified through sophisticated screening processes. Marcus had scored in the top percentile on every metric they measured. For 3 years, Marcus lived a double life. His parents received regular letters and phone calls describing normal teenage activities, science fairs, debate teams, soccer practice. In reality, he was learning skills that most adults would never master: combat techniques, surveillance methods, psychological manipulation, weapons training, and most importantly, how to appear completely ordinary while carrying out extraordinary tasks. The training facility looked like an elite boarding school from the outside. Beautiful brick buildings, manicured lawns, students in crisp uniforms walking between classes. But the curriculum included subjects that would never appear in any normal academic catalog: advanced interrogation psychology, urban warfare tactics, cultural immersion techniques that could make an American teenager disappear seamlessly into populations anywhere in the world. Marcus excelled beyond even their highest expectations. His instructors noted his unusual ability to compartmentalize, to switch between his trained operative persona and genuine teenage awkwardness without any visible transition. This skill would prove invaluable for deep cover assignments where authenticity was literally a matter of life and death. The other students in the program came from similar backgrounds, bright kids whose families believed they were attending exclusive schools. They formed bonds unlike anything found in normal educational settings. When your classmates know exactly how to disarm an opponent or breach a secured facility, traditional teenage concerns seem trivial. Yet they were still kids, dealing with growth spurts, acne, and the universal awkwardness of adolescence. By age 16, Marcus was ready for field assignments. His first mission took him to Eastern Europe, where he posed as an exchange student while gathering intelligence on arms dealers. His second assignment involved infiltrating a domestic terrorist cell by joining their target high school. Each operation built his skills and his reputation within the DSTOL organization, but something unexpected happened during his final year of training. Marcus began questioning the program that had shaped him. Late at night in the dormitory, he and his fellow trainees would whisper about the morality of their situation. They had been children when they were recruited, too young to truly understand what they were agreeing to. Now, as young adults, they were beginning to grasp the full implications of their training and the expectations placed on them. The breaking point came during a training exercise that went wrong. Marcus's closest friend in the program, a girl named Alina, who could speak 7 languages fluently and pick any lock in under 30 seconds, was severely injured during what was supposed to be a routine simulation. The instructors treated it as an acceptable casualty, a learning experience. Marcus realized that to the organization, they were tools to be used and discarded as necessary. 3 months before his scheduled graduation from the program, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He began documenting evidence of the Prometheus Initiative, photos, his training materials, financial records, anything that would prove what was happening to children like him. He knew the risks, but he also knew that someone needed to expose the truth. His escape plan was elegant in its simplicity. During a routine off-campus training exercise, Marcus simply walked away. No dramatic confrontation, no stolen vehicles or Hollywood-style chase scenes. He just left, carrying nothing but a backpack with his evidence and enough cash to disappear. His training had taught him exactly how to vanish, and he used every technique they had given him. For 6 months, Marcus lived off the grid while he decided what to do with his information. He knew that going public immediately would put him and potentially his family in danger. Instead, he chose a different approach. He would hide in plain sight, living as a normal teenager while he figured out how to safely expose the program. That decision led him to Montana, to a small university where nobody would think to look for a trained operative. He enrolled under his real name with legitimate documents, using skills learned in the program to create a believable backstory. To everyone around him, he was just another college freshman trying to find his place in the world. But Marcus knew it was. It's only a matter of time before they found him. The organization that had trained him wouldn't simply write off their investment. They would want him back, or they would want to ensure his silence permanently. Either way, his quiet life as a college student was living on borrowed time as he sat in his psychology class. Taking notes about normal teenage development, Marcus couldn't help but appreciate the irony. He was finally getting the education his parents had thought they were giving him 5 years ago. The only question was how long he would be allowed to keep it before his past caught up with him. 3 weeks into the semester, Marcus noticed the subtle changes that would have been invisible to anyone without his training. The coffee shop barista who always seemed to be wiping down the same table when Marcus studied there. The maintenance worker who appeared in different buildings across campus, always just out of direct sight. The jogger who ran the same route past Marcus's dormitory every morning at exactly 6:47 a.m. Regardless of weather, none of these things alone would have raised alarm bells for a normal college student. But Marcus had been trained to recognize surveillance patterns, and these were textbook examples of rotating coverage. Someone was watching him, and they were being professional about it. The realization should have terrified him, but instead Marcus felt an odd sense of relief. The waiting was over. His handlers had found him, which meant decisions would need to be made soon. He couldn't continue pretending to be a normal student while living under active surveillance. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, his psychology professor, had begun taking special interest in him during class discussions. She would ask him direct questions about behavioral analysis, seemingly impressed by his insights into human psychology. What she didn't know was that Marcus had spent 2 years learning advanced psychological manipulation techniques. Understanding how people think wasn't academic theory for him. It was practical survival knowledge. Marcus, you have an unusual perspective on defensive behaviors, Dr. Walsh commented after class one Thursday. Have you considered psychology as a major? You seem to grasp concepts that usually take students much longer to internalize. Marcus gave her the shy smile he had perfected, genuine enough to seem real, but deflecting attention rather than inviting it. I just find people interesting, I guess. Maybe it's because I grew up on a farm. You learn to read animals and people when you spend a lot of time alone. The lie came easily, backed by carefully constructed memories of a childhood he had never lived. The Prometheus program had taught him to build false identities so thoroughly that he could pass any casual interrogation. But Dr. Walsh's interest made him uncomfortable. Academic attention was the last thing he needed while trying to stay invisible. His roommate, Jake, was becoming another complication. The engineering major from California was everything Marcus pretended to be, genuinely awkward, enthusiastic about normal college experiences, and completely unaware that anything unusual was happening around them. Jake had started inviting Marcus to parties and study groups, social situations that would compromise his carefully maintained low profile. "Dude, you need to get out more," Jake said, while building what appeared to be a small robot on his desk. "There's this girl in my calculus class who keeps asking about you. Apparently you helped her pick up her books when she tripped outside the library." Marcus remembered the incident. The girl had been carrying too much, stumbled on uneven pavement, and scattered papers everywhere. He had helped her collect them because it was the polite thing to do. He had also noticed that one of his surveillance team had been forced to stop and pretend to tie his shoe to avoid walking past during the interaction. The girl's clumsiness had accidentally revealed the watcher, a detail that had both amused and worried Marcus. "I'm not really looking to date anyone right now," Marcus replied honestly. Romantic relationships were impossible when you were carrying classified government secrets and living under false identity. "I'm still adjusting to college life." What he didn't tell Jake was that he had also noticed their dorm room being searched, twice, both times while they were in class, by someone skilled enough to leave everything exactly as they found it. Marcus knew because he had learned to set nearly invisible indicators, a hair placed in a specific position in his desk drawer, books arranged in a particular order, clothing folded with deliberate imperfections. All the telltale signs had been disturbed and carefully replaced. The searchers hadn't found anything because Marcus kept nothing incriminating in his room. The evidence he had gathered about the Prometheus initiative was hidden in a safety deposit box 3 towns away, registered under an identity he had created using techniques learned in the program. His escape money was distributed across multiple locations, none of them traceable to his current persona. Everything potentially dangerous was kept far away from his normal daily life. But the searches told him something important. His former handlers still weren't sure exactly who they were dealing with. If they had been certain he was their missing operative, they would have taken more direct action. The careful surveillance and covert searches suggested they suspected, but couldn't confirm his identity. This gave him a small advantage, but he knew it wouldn't last long. The breakthrough came during his world history class. Professor Martinez was discussing Cold War intelligence operations when a guest speaker arrived unannounced. The man introduced himself as Dr. Richard Blackwood, former CIA analyst, researching academic perspectives on espionage techniques. His presentation was engaging and well-researched, covering famous spy operations and psychological warfare tactics. Marcus recognized Dr. Blackwood immediately. Though the man had aged and gained weight since their last meeting, Richard Blackwood had been one of his instructors at the Prometheus facility, as a specialist who taught advanced interrogation techniques. His presence at the university was no coincidence. During the presentation, Dr. Blackwood's eyes swept the classroom regularly, but when they landed on Marcus, there was no sign of recognition. Either the man was an exceptional actor, or Marcus's physical changes over the past year had been more dramatic than he realized. The stress of living underground, combined with deliberately altering his appearance and mannerisms, had transformed him significantly from the 16-year-old operative he used to be. The lecture focused heavily on how intelligence agencies identify and recruit assets, with particular emphasis on young people with exceptional abilities. Dr. Blackwood described recruitment techniques that Marcus recognized from his own experience the prestigious school offers. The gradual introduction to classified work, the psychological conditioning that made operatives believe they were serving a greater good. The most successful intelligence programs, Dr. Blackwood explained, are those that identify potential operatives during their formative years. Young minds are more adaptable, more willing to accept extraordinary circumstances as normal. However, this same adaptability can become a liability if these individuals begin to question their conditioning as they mature. The word sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Dr. Blackwood was essentially describing his own journey from compliant student to questioning defector. The lecture felt like both a warning and a trap, designed to gauge his reaction to hearing his own story told in academic terms after class. Dr. Blackwood approached several students individually, including Marcus. The conversation was brief and seemingly casual questions about career interests, thoughts on the intelligence community, general academic performance, but Marcus recognized it as a soft interrogation, designed to gather information without raising suspicion. "You seem very knowledgeable about psychological tactics," Dr. Blackwood observed. "Have you had personal experience with intelligence work, or is it purely academic interest?" Marcus maintained his carefully constructed persona, just fascinated by the psychology of it all. "I watch a lot of documentaries and read whatever I can find online. The idea that governments can shape someone's entire worldview from such a young age is both fascinating and terrifying." The answer was perfect. It showed knowledge and interest while attributing everything to public sources. Dr. Blackwood nodded approvingly and moved on to the next student. But as he walked away, Marcus caught a subtle hand signal directed toward the back of the classroom. Someone else was in the room, taking notes on the interactions. That evening, Marcus made a decision that would accelerate everything. He couldn't continue this careful dance indefinitely. The surveillance was tightening, and eventually they would gather enough evidence to confirm his identity. When that happened, he would lose any chance of controlling the situation. It was time to stop running and start fighting back. But first, he needed to know exactly what he was up against. The quiet freshman with a secret history was about to become much more active in determining his own fate. The phone call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night in October. Marcus was awake, having learned long ago that deep sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. The number on his burner phone was one he recognized but had hoped never to see again. "Hello, Marcus." The voice belonged to Colonel Patricia Hayes, the woman who had overseen his training for 3 years. Her tone was professional, but carried undertones of disappointment. Like a teacher addressing a promising student who had made poor choices, Marcus sat up in his narrow dorm bed, grateful that Jake was a heavy sleeper. "Colonel Hayes. Wondered when you would call directly instead of having me followed around campus like a first-year surveillance exercise. You noticed our people. Good. That training wasn't wasted on you." There was genuine pride in her voice, which somehow made the conversation more unsettling. "We need to talk, Marcus. Face to face. There are things happening that you don't understand. Complications that your disappearance has created. I understand more than you think," Marcus replied quietly. "I understand that you recruit children who can't legally consent to what you're asking of them. I understand that you turn teenagers into weapons and call it patriotic service." The silence that followed stretched long enough that Marcus wondered if the connection had been lost. When Colonel Hayes spoke again, her voice carried genuine emotion. "You think we're the villains in this story, don't you? That we stole your childhood and turned you into something unnatural, didn't you? We saved your life, Marcus, and possibly the lives of thousands of others." The colonel's voice hardened. "The world is more dangerous than most people can imagine. There are threats that conventional military and intelligence services aren't equipped to handle. We need people like you, individuals who can think differently, act decisively, and operate in situations that would break ordinary agents." Marcus had heard this justification before. During his years of training, the greater good argument, the necessary sacrifice speech, the idea that exceptional people had exceptional responsibilities, it had been convincing when he was 15 and desperate to believe that his unusual life had meaning and purpose. What threats, Colonel? Drug dealers, arms smugglers, corrupt politicians? All the same problems law enforcement deals with every day, except you use children to solve them. Sit by your window, Marcus. Look toward the parking lot. Against his better judgment, Marcus moved to the small window in his dorm room. Under the yellow glow of the security lights, he could see several black SUVs arranged in a loose perimeter around his building. Men in tactical gear stood at strategic positions, their weapons clearly visible despite the late hour. "Those aren't my people," Colonel Hayes said softly. "They belong to an organization that wants to eliminate everyone who ever participated in the Prometheus Initiative. Not recruit them, not reprogram them, not even imprison them. Eliminate them completely." Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. "What are you talking about?" 3 months ago, Someone leaked classified information about several black operations programs, including ours. The leak included names, locations, operational details, and personal information about operatives and their families. The organization cleaning up this mess has decided that the most efficient solution is to remove anyone who could be considered a security liability. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. His fellow trainees, the instructors who had worked with them, possibly even their families, everyone connected to the program was now at risk. His escape hadn't just freed him from an unwanted life. It had potentially endangered everyone he had ever cared about. Alina, he asked, referring to his closest friend from the training facility. Safe for now. She's with us. Most of your former classmates chose to accept our protection rather than try to survive on their own. The colonel's voice softened. They're good kids, Marcus. They deserve better than what's about to happen to them if we can't resolve this situation. Through his window, Marcus watched as additional vehicles arrived. These weren't the discreet surveillance cars he had grown accustomed to over the past month. These were military-style transport vehicles, the kind used for rapid deployment of tactical teams. The situation was escalating beyond anything he had prepared for. "What do you want from me?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Come back. Help us identify who leaked the information and why. Use your skills to help us protect the other operatives instead of hiding while they're hunted down one by one." Colonel Hayes paused. "I know you have documentation about the program. We need to know what information might be in the hands of people who want to hurt us." Marcus closed his eyes, processing the situation. If the colonel was telling the truth, his careful plan to expose the Prometheus initiative might have been made irrelevant by someone else's leak. Worse, his documentation could now be the key to protecting people he cared about, instead of exposing the organization that had trained them. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" "This could be an elaborate manipulation designed to bring me in voluntarily because, Marcus, you're looking at the alternative right now. If we wanted to take you by force, those teams outside your building would already be moving. We're asking for your cooperation because we need it, not because we can't operate without it." The tactical teams outside were definitely moving now. Marcus could see them taking positions that would allow them to control every exit from his dormitory building. But they weren't moving like people preparing to breach the building. They were moving like people preparing to defend it. "Who leaked the information?" Marcus asked. "We think it was someone inside the program. Someone with access to operational files and personal records. The leak was too comprehensive and too targeted to be an outside hack." Colonel Hayes' voice carried genuine pain. "Someone we trusted betrayed everyone who ever served." Marcus thought about his fellow trainees. The instructors, who had become surrogate parents during his 3 years at the facility. Even the support staff who had made their artificial community feel somewhat like home. The idea that one of them had deliberately put everyone at risk was almost more disturbing than the original. "Program itself. I need proof," he said finally. "If you want my cooperation, I need to see evidence of these threats you're talking about. Not just your word, not just tactical teams outside my window. Real proof that people are in danger. Check your email in 5 minutes." "The account you think we don't know about?" Colonel Hayes disconnected. The call without waiting for a response. Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment, then moved to his laptop. The email account she referenced was one he had created using techniques learned in the program, supposedly untraceable to his current identity. If they knew about it, they had been tracking him more carefully than he realized. The email arrived exactly 5 minutes after the call ended. The subject line was simply evidence. The message contained a single link to an encrypted file-sharing service, along with a password that was a reference to his final training exercise at the facility, something only someone with intimate knowledge of the Untamed program would know. The file contained photographs, intelligence reports, and what appeared to be intercepted communications. Marcus recognized some of the faces in the photographs' former classmates, instructors, even some of the administrative staff from the facility. Each photo was marked with dates, locations, and threat assessments. Several were marked with red crosses, indicating confirmed kills. Elena's photo was in the file. along with intelligence suggesting she had been targeted for elimination while working undercover in Southeast Asia. Only intervention by a rapid extraction team had saved her life. Other operatives hadn't been as fortunate. The final document in the file was a partial intelligence report, identifying him as a high-value target due to his knowledge of operational procedures and his access to classified information. The report recommended immediate termination to prevent potential security breaches. Marcus closed the laptop and looked out his window again. The tactical teams were still in position, but now he understood they weren't there to capture him. They were there to keep other people away from him, people who wanted him dead. His phone rang again. This time he answered immediately. "I'll meet with you," he said without waiting for the colonel to speak. "But not here, and not on your terms. I choose the location, the time, and the security arrangements." "Agreed," Colonel Hayes replied immediately. "Where and when?" Marcus looked out at the tactical teams securing the area around his dormitory, thinking about his fellow operatives who were being hunted by people they had never met for crimes they hadn't committed. His quiet life as a college freshman was officially over. It was time to become an operative again, but this time he would be fighting to protect the people he cared about, rather than serving an organization he didn't fully trust. "Tomorrow night, I'll send you the details." Marcus disconnected the call and began planning what might be the most important operation of his life. The abandoned grain elevator stood like a concrete monument to better times, its weathered walls rising against the Montana sky 30 miles from campus. Marcus had chosen the location carefully, isolated enough to prevent ambush, but with clear sightlines in all directions. More importantly, he knew the building's interior layout from a training exercise years earlier, when the Prometheus program had used similar structures to teach urban warfare techniques. He arrived 3 hours before the scheduled meeting, approaching the building from the north through a drainage ditch that kept him below the sight line of anyone watching from a distance. His training had taught him to trust no one completely, not even people who claimed to be protecting him. If Colonel Hayes was setting a trap, he would be ready for it. The inside of the grain elevator was exactly as he remembered. From the training facility's replica, a maze of metal walkways, concrete silos, and industrial equipment that could provide cover or become obstacles depending on the situation. Marcus positioned himself on the 3rd level, with clear views of all approaches and multiple escape routes available. Then he waited. Colonel Hayes arrived precisely on time, driving alone in an unremarkable sedan, rather than the military vehicles Marcus had expected. She was a small woman in her 50s, with graying hair and the posture of someone who had spent decades making difficult decisions. When she stepped out of her car, she kept her hands visible and moved slowly, showing respect for Marcus's tactical advantage. "You chose well," she called out as she approached the building. "Defensible position, multiple exits, excellent field of fire. Your instructors would be proud. Some of my instructors are dead because of this leak you mentioned." Marcus replied from his concealed position. "I'm not feeling particularly proud right now." Colonel Hayes entered the building through the main door, which Marcus had left open as a signal that he was willing to meet. She moved carefully but confidently, like someone navigating familiar terrain. When she reached the bottom of the stairs leading to Marcus's level, she stopped and waited for permission to continue. "Come up," Marcus said, "but keep your hands where I can see them." The colonel climbed the metal stairs slowly, sound echoing through the empty building. When she reached Marcus's level, she found him standing behind a concrete barrier with excellent cover and clean shooting lanes. His positioning showed both respect for her abilities and determination. "To maintain tactical advantage, you've grown up," she said simply. "When you left us, you were still thinking like a student. Now you're thinking like an operator." Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of deception or hidden weapons. Colonel Hayes looked older than he remembered, with new lines around her eyes and a weariness that hadn't been there during his training years. The stress of the current situation was clearly taking its toll on everyone involved. "Tell me about the leak," he said. "Everything. Names, dates, methods. If you want my help, I need to understand what we're really dealing with." Colonel Hayes reached slowly into her jacket and withdrew a tablet computer. "May I show you some files? They're easier to understand than verbal explanations." Marcus nodded, and she activated the device. The first document that appeared was a personnel file. He recognized his own training records from the Prometheus facility. But this version contained information that should have been classified far above his security clearance, including psychological evaluations, family background investigations, and operational assessments he had never seen before. 3 months ago, someone with administrative access to our central database downloaded approximately 40,000 files, the colonel explained. Personnel records for every operative we've ever trained. Detailed operational reports going back 15 years, financial records, facility locations, and complete organizational charts showing everyone from instructors to support staff. The scale of the breach was staggering. Marcus had imagined that his own documentation might compromise the program, but this was far beyond anything he had gathered. Someone had essentially downloaded the entire history of the Prometheus initiative. The files were offered for sale on the dark web, Colonel Hayes continued. Not to the highest bidder, but specifically to organizations known for eliminating security threats rather than exploiting them. Someone wanted us destroyed, not exposed or investigated. They wanted everyone connected to the program dead. She showed him intercepts of communications between various criminal and terrorist organizations, all discussing the sudden availability of detailed information about American intelligence operatives. Several groups had already begun acting on the information, targeting former operatives who were living under assumed identities around the world. "We've lost 12 people so far," the colonel said quietly. "Good people who were just trying to build normal lives after their service ended, killed by professionals who never would have found them without the leaked information." Marcus felt a sick weight settling in his stomach. 12 people dead because someone had decided to burn down the entire program. People like him who had been children when they were recruited and young adults when they tried to leave. People who deserved the chance to make their own choices about their futures. "Do you know who did it?" he asked. "We have suspects." 3 people had the access and opportunity to download those files. The problem is that 2 of them are also dead, killed in what appeared to be unrelated accidents shortly after the leak occurred, which leaves us with 1 primary suspect. But we can't locate him. Colonel Hayes showed him a photograph that made his blood run cold. Dr. Jonathan Reeves had been the program's chief psychologist, the man responsible for evaluating operatives' mental health and readiness for assignments. Marcus remembered him as a kindly figure who seemed genuinely concerned about the students' well-being, often advocating for lighter training schedules when he felt someone was being pushed too hard. Double quotes. Dr. Reeves disappeared 2 weeks before the leak occurred, the colonel explained. He had access to everything: personnel files, operational records, psychological profiles that could be used to predict how former operatives might react to being hunted. If someone wanted to systematically eliminate everyone connected to our program, he would know exactly how to do it. Marcus tried to process this information. Dr. Reeves had been one of the few adults at the facility who had treated the students like actual children rather than weapons in training. The idea that he had betrayed everyone who had trusted him was almost incomprehensible. "Why?" Marcus asked. "What would motivate him to do something like this?" "We think he was compromised by a foreign intelligence service. Dr. Reeves had significant financial problems, a sick wife, expensive medical treatments, gambling debts. Someone probably offered him enough money to solve his problems in exchange for the files." The colonel showed him financial records indicating that Dr. Reeves had received several large payments from offshore accounts in the months before his disappearance. The amounts were substantial enough to resolve his known debts and provide significant additional compensation. "But there's another possibility," Colonel Hayes continued. Dr. Reeves might have genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. He filed several reports over the years questioning the ethics of the program, particularly regarding the recruitment and training of minors. He might have convinced himself that destroying the program would free everyone connected to it. Marcus understood that motivation all too well. He had wrestled with similar ethical concerns during his final year of training. The difference was that he had chosen to expose the program through legitimate channels, not sell everyone's personal information to people who wanted them dead. "What do you need from me?" Marcus asked finally. "Dr. Reeves knows all of us too well. He can predict how we think, how we operate, how we'll try to find him. But you're different. You left the program before completing your training. And you've spent the last year developing skills and perspectives we never taught you. You might be able to think of approaches that wouldn't occur to us." The request made sense from an operational standpoint. But it also meant Marcus would be actively working with the organization he had tried to escape. The irony wasn't lost on him. His attempt to expose the Prometheus Initiative had led to a situation where he needed to help protect. There's one more thing," Colonel Hayes said. "Dr. Reeves had access to detailed psychological profiles of every operative, including predictive models of how they would respond to various stressors. He knows exactly which buttons to push to manipulate or break each of us. That information is probably part of what he sold." Marcus understood the implications immediately. Anyone hunting former operatives would have a psychological roadmap showing their fears, motivations, weaknesses, and behavioral patterns. It would be like fighting an enemy who knew exactly how you would react to every possible scenario. "Show me everything," Marcus said. "Files, communications, operational plans, suspect profiles. If I'm going to help hunt Dr. Reeves, I need to know everything you know about what we're up against." Colonel Hayes smiled for the first time since arriving. "Welcome back, Marcus. We've missed you," as she opened additional files on her tablet. Marcus realized that his quiet life as a college freshman was permanently over. The black helicopters appeared over the university campus at dawn, their rotors barely audible thanks to stealth modifications that most civilians would never recognize. Students stumbled out of dormitories in pajamas and robes, phones already recording what they assumed was some kind of military training exercise. They had no idea they were witnessing the deployment of one of America's most elite special operations units. Marcus watched from his dorm room window as Delta Force operators fast-roped from the helicopters onto the administration building, the library, and the student center. These weren't the discreet surveillance teams that had been watching him for weeks. These were door kickers. The military's solution to problems that required immediate and overwhelming force. Colonel Hayes had warned him this might happen, but seeing it unfold was still surreal. The university had been placed under what the military called protective quarantine, after intelligence suggested that Dr. Reeves might attempt to target Marcus directly rather than relying on hired killers. The entire campus was now effectively a military base until the threat could be neutralized. Holy shit, dude. What is happening out there? Jake burst into their room, still wearing the Star Wars pajamas his girlfriend had given him for his birthday. There are soldiers everywhere. They're setting up some kind of command center in the dining hall. Marcus continued watching the deployment through their window. The operators moved with mechanical precision, establishing security perimeters and communications nodes exactly as he had been taught during his own training. Within 30 minutes, they had transformed a sleepy college campus into a secure military zone. Probably some kind of terrorist threat. Marcus replied, using the cover story he had helped develop with Colonel Hayes. The government sometimes has to take precautions when they receive credible intelligence about potential attacks. The lie came easily. But it felt strange to be deceiving Jake after months of careful friendship. His roommate was a genuinely good person who deserved better than being caught up in a situation he couldn't understand. Unfortunately, appeared at their door 15 minutes later, dressed in full tactical gear but with her weapons secured to show non-hostile intent. She was young for a Delta Force officer. It's probably only a few years older than Marcus, with the controlled intensity that marked special operations personnel. "Marcus Thompson?" she asked, though her tone indicated she already knew the answer. "I need you to come with me. Your roommate can stay here, but this floor is now under protective lockdown." Jake looked between them with growing confusion. Wait, what? Why do they want Marcus? He's just a psychology major from Nebraska. This doesn't make sense. Captain Rodriguez maintained her professional demeanor, but Marcus could see her evaluating Jake as a potential security risk. In her world, everyone was either an asset, a threat, or collateral damage to be managed. Jake definitely fell into the third category. Your friend has information relevant to an ongoing investigation, she explained patiently. He's not in trouble, but we need his cooperation to resolve a serious security matter. Marcus grabbed his jacket and the emergency bag he had kept packed since the meeting with Colonel Hayes. Jake watched in obvious bewilderment as his quiet roommate prepared to leave with Special Forces operators like it was a normal Tuesday morning occurrence. I'll explain later, Marcus told Jake, knowing that he probably wouldn't be able to explain anything ever. This is just a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up. The walk across campus felt like moving through a war zone. Delta Force operators had established checkpoints at every major intersection. While others maintained overwatch positions from rooftops and upper-story windows, students were being herded into designated safe areas by soldiers who looked like they could fight a small war by themselves. This is pretty extreme security for a consultation, Marcus commented as they walked toward the temporary command center. Captain Rodriguez glanced at him sideways. You're not just a consultant anymore, Thompson. As of 6 hours ago, you're the primary target. Intelligence intercepted communications indicating that Dr. Reeves has hired a specialized assassination team to eliminate you specifically. The news hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had known he was in danger, but the idea that someone was actively planning his murder made the threat feel immediate and personal. Dr. Reeves wasn't just trying to cover his tracks anymore. He was deliberately hunting the people he had once been responsible for protecting. What kind of assassination team? Marcus asked. Former Spetsnaz operators with experience in targeted elimination of high-value individuals. These aren't street criminals or even typical mercenaries. They're military professionals who specialize in killing people exactly like you. The temporary command center had been established in what used to be the university's main conference room. Banks of communication equipment lined the walls, while tactical maps and surveillance monitors showed real-time coverage of the entire campus. It looked like the kind of setup Marcus had seen during major military operations. Not the response to a single rogue operative. Colonel Hayes stood at the center of it all, coordinating multiple agencies and military units with the calm efficiency of someone who had managed similar crises before. When she saw Marcus enter, she immediately walked over to brief him on the latest developments. Dr. Reeves made contact 3 hours ago, she said without preamble. He wants to negotiate directly with you. No intermediaries, no military escort. It's just a face-to-face meeting to discuss what he calls ending this situation peacefully.
Yes.
Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He wants to meet with me personally? That sounds like a trap. Probably. But it's also an opportunity. If we can get close enough to Dr. Reeves, we can end this threat permanently and recover the stolen files. The question is whether we can do it without getting you killed in the process. Captain Rodriguez joined their conversation, carrying a tactical tablet loaded with intelligence reports. The assassination team he hired has already infiltrated the area. We've identified at least 6 hostile operators within a 20-mile radius of the campus. They're positioning for what appears to be a coordinated assault. The screen showed satellite imagery of the surrounding countryside, with red markers indicating confirmed enemy positions. The assassins had arranged themselves in a loose perimeter around the university, close enough to respond quickly, but far enough away to avoid immediate detection by the Delta Force security teams. They're not going to attack the campus directly, Marcus realized. Too much military presence, too many potential complications. They're waiting for me to leave the secured area, which is exactly what Dr. Reeves is counting on, Colonel Hayes agreed. He's offering to meet at a location of your choice. But anywhere you go, we'll give his team opportunities to eliminate you. Marcus studied the tactical display, his training automatically analyzing potential approaches and defensive positions. The assassination team had positioned themselves professionally, covering all major roads and likely escape routes. If he left the campus, he would be walking into a carefully prepared kill zone. What if that's exactly what we want them to think? He said slowly, what if we use their trap against them? Captain Rodriguez looked interested. Explain, they're expecting me to leave campus for this meeting with Dr. Reeves. They've positioned themselves to intercept me when I do. But what if we already know where they are, and we're ready for them? What if we turn their assassination attempt into a trap for them? Colonel Hayes nodded approvingly. You want to use yourself as bait to draw them into engagement with superior forces. Risky, but it could work if we coordinate properly. The plan began taking shape quickly. Marcus would appear to leave campus for the meeting with Dr. Reeves, following a route that would lead him past several of the known assassination positions. Delta Force teams would shadow him at a distance, ready to engage the hostile operators when they revealed themselves by attacking. The key is making it look authentic. Captain Rodriguez explained. If the assassination team suspects this is a setup, they'll abort and wait for another opportunity. You have to appear genuinely vulnerable while actually being protected by some of the best soldiers in the D. World. Marcus understood the psychology involved. The assassins were professionals who would abort their mission if they detected any sign of a trap. Everything about his departure from campus had to appear routine and unguarded. Even though he would actually be surrounded by friendly forces, there's one more element we need to consider, Colonel Hayes added. Dr. Reeves knows you better than anyone else involved in this situation. He'll be analyzing your behavior, looking for signs that you're not acting naturally. If he suspects you're working with us, you might trigger the assassination attempt early or change his approach entirely. The weight of the situation settled on Marcus's shoulders. He was about to become the central figure in a complex military operation involving multiple elite units and foreign assassins. Success would mean ending the threat to his former classmates and instructors. Failure would mean his death and the continued hunting of everyone he cared about. Outside the command center, Delta Force operators continued their The meeting location Dr. Reeves had chosen was perfect for an ambush, an abandoned mining facility in the hills 15 miles north of campus. The access road wound through dense forest with multiple choke points where vehicles could be disabled or occupants eliminated. With minimal risk to the attackers, Marcus had to admire the tactical thinking, even as he prepared to walk into what was essentially a death trap. He left campus at exactly 3 p.m., driving a borrowed Honda Civic that looked appropriately civilian while containing several hidden modifications. The car's communications system was linked directly to the Delta Force Command Center. Its bulletproof windows could stop rifle rounds, and the trunk contained enough weapons and ammunition to fight a small war if everything went wrong. The first assassination team revealed itself 12 minutes into the drive. Marcus spotted the glint of a sniper scope in the trees, overlooking a sharp curve in the mountain road. Exactly where Captain Rodriguez had predicted they would position an overwatch element. He maintained his speed and appeared to notice nothing. While speaking quietly into his hidden microphone, Tango 1 confirmed. Approximately 400 meters northeast of Checkpoint Alpha, single shooter with what appears to be a high-powered rifle. The response came through his nearly invisible earpiece. Copy, Prometheus. Delta 2-6 has eyes on target. Standing by for engagement authorization, Marcus continued driving, following the winding road deeper into the forest while Delta Force operators moved invisibly through the trees around him. The plan required the assassination team to reveal all their positions before any engagement began. If they struck too early, surviving members might escape to try again later. The second contact came at the bridge crossing over Deadman's Creek. 2 men in hunting clothes stood beside a disabled pickup truck, apparently waiting for assistance with mechanical problems. It was a classic interdiction setup. Force the target to stop in a confined space with limited escape routes, then eliminate them while they were vulnerable. Marcus slowed his vehicle as he approached, playing the role of a helpful college student who didn't recognize obvious danger. Through his earpiece, he heard Captain Rodriguez coordinating with multiple sniper teams who had the fake hunters in their crosshairs. Tango 2 and 3 confirmed at the bridge. They're armed, but weapons are concealed. Vehicle appears to be genuinely disabled, probably as cover for their position. Roger, Prometheus. Continue to target location. We'll clean up the periphery once the primary engagement begins. The abandoned mining facility came into view 20 minutes after leaving campus. It was exactly the kind of location Marcus would have avoided under normal circumstances. Multiple buildings, providing concealment for attackers, limited escape routes, and terrain that favored defensive positions over mobile tactics. Dr. Reeves had chosen well. Marcus parked his car in the designated location and stepped out slowly, making sure to appear cautious but not paranoid. His former instructor was waiting inside the main processing building. It's a concrete structure that had once housed her separation equipment. Now it was just an empty shell filled with rusted machinery and broken windows. Dr. Reeves looked older than Marcus remembered, with gray hair and new lines around his eyes that spoke of recent stress and sleepless nights. He wore civilian clothes and appeared unarmed, but Marcus knew better than to assume safety based on appearances. The man had sold detailed information about dozens of trained operatives to people who wanted them dead. Marcus, Dr. Reeves said as he entered the building, "You look well. College life seems to agree with you, Dr. Reeves." Marcus maintained a respectful tone despite everything that had happened. "I have to admit, I'm surprised you wanted to meet face to face. Seems risky for someone in your position." The older man smiled sadly. "My position is already hopeless, Marcus. I'm a dead man regardless of how this situation resolves. The people I worked with don't leave loose ends. And the government I betrayed won't show mercy to someone who compromised national security." Marcus studied his former instructor's face. Looking for signs of deception or hidden weapons, Dr. Reeves appeared genuinely resigned to his fate. But that could make him more dangerous rather than less. People with nothing to lose often made desperate choices. Then why arrange this meeting? What do you hope to accomplish? I want to explain why I did it. You deserve to understand that this wasn't just about money or foreign intelligence services. I genuinely believed I was protecting people like you from an organization that was destroying your lives. The words carried obvious sincerity, but Marcus couldn't allow himself to be manipulated by emotional appeals. Through his earpiece, he heard Delta Force operators reporting movement around the facility. The assassination team was moving into final positions for their attack. You protected us by selling our personal information to people who want us dead? Marcus asked. That's an interesting definition of protection. Double quotes. Dr. Reeves ran his hands through his gray hair, looking every year of his age. I thought I was exposing the program to legitimate oversight agencies. I thought congressional investigation and media attention would shut down Prometheus and free everyone who had been trapped by it. I never intended for the information to end up with criminal organizations, but it did end up with them. And 12 people are dead because of your mistake. I know. The words were barely a whisper. I've seen the intelligence reports. Good people, people I cared about, killed because I was naive about who I was really dealing with. I can't undo what I've done, but I can try to minimize the future damage. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Captain Rodriguez's voice. All elements report ready. Hostile forces are in final attack positions. Prometheus, you need to move this conversation along. They're going to initiate soon. Marcus nodded slightly, then addressed Dr. Reeves directly. What are you proposing? I still have copies of some of the files I downloaded. Personnel records, operational details, psychological profiles. If I destroy them publicly, it might convince the people who bought the original leak that the information is no longer valuable. It won't bring back the people who are already dead, but it might save the ones who are still alive. The offer was tempting, but Marcus knew it was probably too late for such measures. The criminal organizations who had purchased the information would have already copied and distributed it to their operational teams. Destroying Dr. Reeves' remaining files would be symbolic at best. That assumes the people hunting us are motivated by the value of the information rather than the need to eliminate witnesses, Marcus replied. Some organizations prefer to kill potential problems rather than manage ongoing security risks. Dr. Reeves nodded sadly. You're probably right. But I had to try to offer something. I've destroyed so many lives already. The sound of gunfire erupted suddenly from the forest around the mining facility. The assassination team had initiated their attack, probably targeting what they thought were Marcus's escape routes while preparing to storm the building. They had no idea they were walking into carefully prepared positions held by some of the world's most elite soldiers. That would be your hired killers. Marcus said calmly, despite his racing heart. I hope you weren't planning to stick around for the aftermath, Dr. Reeves looked genuinely surprised by the sounds of battle outside. What are you talking about? I didn't hire anyone to kill you. This meeting was supposed to be about finding a peaceful solution. The confusion in his voice sounded authentic, which created a disturbing new possibility. If Dr. Reeves hadn't arranged for the assassination team, then someone else was orchestrating this attack. Someone who wanted both Marcus and Dr. Reeves dead, possibly to prevent them from comparing information and discovering additional betrayals. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Captain Rodriguez coordinating the engagement. Tango 1 neutralized. Tango 2 and 3 are pinned down at the bridge. Tango 4 through 6 are attempting to flank from the east. All Prometheus elements, maintain your positions until we complete the sweep. The gunfire was intensifying, suggesting that the assassination team was larger and better equipped than intelligence had indicated. Marcus drew his concealed pistol and moved to a defensive position behind a concrete barrier, motioning for Dr. Reeves to do the same. If you didn't hire them, then who did? Marcus asked. I don't know. The people I worked with said they only wanted the information for intelligence purposes. They claimed they were legitimate government contractors working for allied nations. I never imagined they would use it for targeted killings. Marcus realized they might both be victims of a larger conspiracy. Pawns in someone else's plan to eliminate everyone connected to the Prometheus initiative. The question was whether they could survive long enough to figure out who was really behind the systematic hunting of former operatives. Outside the building, the sound of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of additional Delta Force elements. The battle was turning in their favor, but Marcus knew the real fight was just beginning. Finding and stopping whoever was orchestrating these attacks would require resources and intelligence far beyond what any single military operation could provide. For now, though, survival was the immediate priority. And despite everything Dr. Reeves had done, Marcus found himself hoping they could both. The silence that followed the gunfight was more unsettling than the battle itself had been. Marcus kept his weapon ready while scanning the abandoned mining facility for any signs of surviving threats. Through the broken windows, he could see Delta Force operators methodically clearing the surrounding forest. Their professional movements, suggesting the immediate danger had passed, Dr. Reeves sat, slumped against a concrete wall, looking older than his 62 years. The stress of the past few months had clearly taken a severe toll on his health. His hands shook slightly as he reached into his jacket pocket, a movement that made Marcus tense until he saw it was only a cell phone. I need to show you something, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Something that might explain who really wants us dead. The phone contained, encrypted, messages from his supposed government contacts. But when Marcus examined them more carefully, he noticed inconsistencies that his training had taught him to recognize. The communication protocols were wrong for legitimate intelligence agencies, and several of the code phrases were outdated by at least 5 years. These aren't from allied government contractors, Marcus realized. Someone was impersonating official contacts to manipulate you into stealing those files. Dr. Reeves nodded miserably. I suspected as much after the first operatives started dying. Real intelligence agencies don't typically murder the assets they're trying to recruit. But by then it was too late to undo what I'd done. Captain Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her tactical gear showing evidence of the recent engagement. Building is secure, but we need to move you both to a safer location. We captured 2 of the assassination team alive, and their preliminary interrogation is revealing some interesting information. The debriefing took place in a secure conference room at the nearest military base, where Colonel Hayes had assembled representatives from multiple intelligence agencies. The captured assassins had provided enough information to begin unraveling a conspiracy that extended far beyond the Prometheus initiative, the assassination. Contracts were arranged through an organization called Meridian Solutions, Colonel Hayes explained. On the surface, they appear to be a legitimate private military contractor. In reality, specialize in eliminating inconvenient people for clients who prefer not to get their hands dirty. The intelligence files spread across the conference table painted a disturbing picture. Meridian Solutions had been systematically targeting former operatives from multiple classified programs, not just Prometheus. Their client list included foreign governments, criminal organizations, and even some domestic political figures who wanted to eliminate potential security threats. Dr. Reeves was manipulated into providing the initial intelligence breach, Captain Rodriguez continued. But Meridian was already planning to eliminate everyone connected to several black operations programs. The leak just gave them the detailed information they needed to do it efficiently. Marcus studied the organizational charts and financial records. Pieces of a puzzle that was finally becoming clear. They're not just cleaning up security risks. They're eliminating institutional knowledge. If all the operatives and instructors are dead, there's no one left who can testify about what these programs actually did. Exactly, Colonel Hayes confirmed. Several congressional oversight committees have been asking uncomfortable questions about classified training programs. Someone decided that the easiest way to avoid scrutiny was to ensure there were no witnesses left to provide testimony. The implications were staggering. Marcus had assumed the threats against former operatives were about preventing intelligence leaks or protecting ongoing operations. Instead, they were about erasing evidence of past activities that might embarrass or implicate powerful people. Dr. Reeves spoke up from his corner of the conference room. The psychological profiles I provided would have been essential for this kind of systematic elimination. Meridian needed to understand how each operative would react to being hunted, what tactics would be most effective against them, how to manipulate their behavioral patterns. Which means you're both still in danger, Captain Rodriguez added. You've seen too much of their operational structure. Dr. Reeves knows details about their psychological warfare capabilities. Meridian will keep trying to eliminate you until they succeed, or we shut them down completely. Marcus considered their options. Running and hiding had already proven ineffective. Meridian had too many resources and too much detailed intelligence about their targets. Fighting back required taking the offensive against a well-funded organization with national connections and professional killers. We need to flip the script, he said finally. Instead of reacting to their attacks, we need to start hunting them. Use their own tactics against them. Colonel Hayes looked interested. Explain your thinking. Meridian operates by staying hidden, using intermediaries and cutouts to avoid direct exposure. Their business model depends on maintaining plausible deniability. If we can expose their operations publicly, their clients will abandon them, and their government protections will disappear. The plan that emerged over the next several hours was audacious in its scope. Rather than simply defending against Meridian's attacks, they would launch a comprehensive intelligence operation designed to gather evidence of the organization's criminal activities. The goal was to build a case strong enough to trigger international law enforcement. His knowledge of psychological manipulation techniques, combined with his guilt over the consequences of his previous actions, made him uniquely qualified to help identify and exploit Meridians. Vulnerabilities. I can provide detailed profiles of their operational methods, he offered. I've been analyzing their communications and behavioral patterns since I realized I'd been deceived. I know how they think, how they make decisions, what kind of pressure they'll respond to. Over the following weeks, what began as a simple protective operation evolved into one of the most complex counterintelligence efforts in recent memory. Marcus found himself working with agencies he had never heard of, using skills he had learned as a teenager to help dismantle an organization that threatened national security. The breakthrough came when they identified Meridians as primary financial backers. The organization wasn't just a private military contractor, it was the operational arm of a coalition of interests that included foreign governments, domestic political figures, and criminal organizations who all benefited from eliminating inconvenient witnesses. The final phase of the operation took place simultaneously across 3 continents. While Marcus and Captain Rodriguez led raids on Meridian facilities in the United States, Allied forces struck their operations in Europe and Asia. The coordinated attacks captured key personnel, seized financial records, and most importantly, recovered communications that proved the organization's connection to multiple high-profile assassinations. Dr. Reeves didn't live to see the operation's conclusion. He died during the raid on Meridian's primary command facility, killed while trying to access computer systems that contained evidence of the organization's complete client list. His final act was to ensure that the information needed to protect the surviving operatives would reach the right people. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a different conference room, this time facing a congressional oversight committee that was finally getting the answers it had been seeking. The Meridian revelations had exposed corruption and illegal activities that reached into the highest levels of government and military leadership. The Prometheus initiative was officially discontinued. Its surviving operatives offered legitimate career opportunities or educational support to help them transition to normal civilian lives. The secrecy that had protected the program had also allowed it to be exploited by people with their own agendas. Marcus returned to college the following semester, but not to the same university in Montana. He chose a larger school where he could disappear more easily into the general population. His transcripts listed him as a transfer student majoring in international relations. With a focus on intelligence studies, his new roommate was a pre-med student from Ohio who thought Marcus was unusually well-informed about world events, but otherwise perfectly normal. They would stay up late discussing politics and philosophy, conversations that helped Marcus process his experiences while maintaining the careful boundaries necessary for his new life. Sometimes Marcus would catch glimpses of familiar faces on campus, other former Prometheus operatives who had also chosen education as their path forward. They would nod politely if they passed on walkways, but never acknowledged their shared history. They were all learning to be normal people, and that meant leaving their extraordinary past behind them, but late at night. When his roommate was asleep and the campus was quiet, Marcus would sometimes think about Dr. Reeves and wonder if there had been another way to resolve the situation. The man had made terrible mistakes, but his final sacrifice had helped, saved dozens of lives and exposed a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power. The quiet freshman, with a secret history, had become a young man with a different kind of secret. The knowledge that sometimes the only way to protect innocent people is to stand up to powerful interests that PR